Title: Japan's Mission Impossible. Who takes the loss? Flint West reporting. In November of 2025, Japan announced a $135 billion stimulus package. At first glance, it appeared to be another government attempting to support economic growth, ease inflationary pressures, invest in strategic industries, and strengthen national security. Governments do this all the time. Markets, however, ask a different question. Who pays for it? That question sits at the center of what I believe is a much larger problem. Section 1. Economists know one version of this problem as the Mundell-Fleming trilemma, otherwise known as the impossible trinity. It proposes that under certain conditions, nation-states cannot simultaneously maximize exchange rate stability, monetary policy independence, and free capital movement. Something must eventually give. This discussion applies that same intuition elsewhere. What happens if we ask a different question? How do you simultaneously preserve fiscal sustainability, positive real returns for creditors, and purchasing power for savers? At first, the answer appears deceptively simple. You preserve all three. Unfortunately, markets are rarely so accommodating. Under sufficient stress, preserving all three objectives simultaneously appears to become increasingly difficult. Someone must eventually absorb the cost of adjustment. And therein lies Japan's mission impossible. Section 2. Governments do not wish to become insolvent. Bondholders do not wish to accept financial repression or negative real returns. Savers do not wish to watch their purchasing power diluted away. Politicians, unsurprisingly, would prefer not to preside over any of the above. No participant voluntarily wishes to become poorer. The question therefore becomes remarkably simple. Who takes the loss? That question is neither theoretical nor unique to Japan. We have seen versions of this story before. Section 3. Britain met the monster first. In September of 2022, British Prime Minister Liz Truss and Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng announced what became known as the mini-budget. The plan proposed significant unfunded tax cuts and implied substantial additional government borrowing. Markets listened carefully. Then they said no. Bond investors immediately began repricing fiscal risk. British government bond prices collapsed. Yields exploded higher. Pension funds employing liability-driven investment strategies suddenly found themselves facing margin calls. They became forced sellers of government debt into a collapsing market, which made the situation even worse. The monster had arrived. The Bank of England was eventually forced to intervene to stabilize the gilt market and preserve financial stability. Within weeks, the government's fiscal program became politically and financially untenable. The policies were reversed. Kwasi Kwarteng was dismissed. Liz Truss resigned shortly thereafter. Game over. The details were uniquely British. The order of operations was not. Fiscal announcements changed expectations. Markets priced the adjustment. Participants repositioned themselves accordingly. Someone had to take the loss. This content is brought to you by Bobby Giggs. Promote your brand here and reach a wide audience across platforms like YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Follow the links in the description to get started. Section 4. Japan now appears to be confronting its own version of the same monster. The catalyst, at least from this framework's perspective, was November 21st, 2025. Japan announced a $135 billion stimulus package. Markets immediately began asking questions. How will this be financed? Who absorbs the cost? Will creditors receive positive real returns? Will savers preserve their purchasing power? Can fiscal sustainability be maintained? The answers to those questions matter because markets are forward-looking discovery mechanisms. Participants do not wait patiently for losses to materialize. They reposition themselves based upon their expectations of tomorrow. Bondholders may decide they no longer wish to become the adjustment mechanism. Savers may arrive at precisely the same conclusion. Governments may then find themselves searching for increasingly difficult policy responses. Section 5. Notice what is happening here. Nobody is behaving irrationally. Bondholders are behaving rationally. Savers are behaving rationally. Governments are behaving rationally. Politicians are behaving rationally. Markets are behaving rationally. Every participant is simultaneously attempting to optimize for their own objective function. The tragedy is that these objective functions cannot always be simultaneously satisfied. Perhaps that leads us to the most important observation of all. Losses cannot be destroyed. They can only be transferred. Governments can transfer them. Bondholders can transfer them. Savers can transfer them. Politicians can transfer them. Markets merely determine where they finally come to rest. This is why Japan may ultimately prove more interesting than the latest bond market headline or currency chart. Japan is not necessarily the story. The story is the adjustment problem that every nation-state must eventually confront. The names change, the institutions change, the politics change. The monster does not. Governments make announcements, markets make decisions. Reality gets the final vote. Section 6. Japan's mission impossible is therefore not merely preserving economic growth or defending the yen. It is attempting to simultaneously preserve fiscal sustainability, purchasing power, and positive real returns in a world where nobody wishes to become the adjustment mechanism. Markets do not decide whether a loss exists. They merely decide who ultimately bears it. The question is not whether an adjustment must occur. The question is, and always has been, who takes the loss? Flint West signing off.